The presenting sponsor of OnEducation is Participate. Lately, teachers from all over have been working together to find new approaches to provide quality remote education. Participate's sister company, Participate Learning, presents United We Teach, a global gathering place for educators to share distance learning resources as we navigate these strange times. For these resources and more, visit participate.com/oneducation. I don't want to say we were lost, but let's just say...
But you were lost?
But we didn't know where we were at.
Welcome to OnEducation, part of the On Podcast Media Network. My name is Mike Washburn.
And I'm Glen Irvin. Friends, we have an awesome pod for you today. We will discuss whether standardized tests are coming to an end, the end of Microsoft's streaming platform Mixer, the hype around the new Apple iOS, and our guest this week is educator Jed Dearybury.
Hey, so, it's funny this talk about Mixer because we've both been streaming lately. I watched you crush Hearthstone the other day, which was very fun.
His luck. It's the swings of ups and downs of playing card games.
I love watching Hearthstone. I think it's at the high levels. That's why I talk about it all the time when we get a chance, because I think it's great. The complexities of like higher level Hearthstone is pretty impressive. It's really cool stuff to watch.
Yeah, there's lots of different ways of actually being able to approach the same situation. So that is kind of what makes it interesting. I guess there's some actual really, really good Hearthstone players that are also chess players.
That seems reasonable.
Professional chess players, and they say that the reason why they enjoy Hearthstone as far as compared to chess is that there's a lot of complexities to the same situations, whereas in chess there is some standard things that just happen. Plus there's RNG. There's just the randomness that sometimes happen, which is my favorite part of the game, is when random stuff goes right. Not when it goes wrong, but when it goes right. So yes, sure. It's a fun game.
Sure. I've been streaming, obviously, so we've talked about, I've been streaming on the Inside Participate Twitch channel with Steve Isaacs almost every day, twice a day, for the better part of 3 months. So if you are looking for some really cool game-based learning, professional learning, this is a cool place to go. So that's twitch.tv/InsideParticipate, the Participate Twitch channel. And we're definitely working on a lot of cool stuff there. And I actually just launched this week my own personal streaming channel. Put a lot of effort into it. I've dabbled in streaming, but never taken it seriously. But this is serious now. Yeah,
take it. And so it's going hardcore.
Yeah. Twitch.tv/Mr. Washburn. It's got a logo and everything. That's how you know it's serious, friends. So trying to 100% achievement Minecraft hardcore. That's the first goal of the stream, and then hopefully build some fancy stuff at the same time. So Glenn is crushing Hearthstone, and I'm going to try to not die in Minecraft, and that's us.
Easier
that's
said
us
than
streaming.
done too.
It's so hard. I almost died on stream. Last night, right at the start of the stream, like literally popped in, went up my stairs out of my mind, and there were 2 skeletons literally staring right at me, and I was like, whoa, and had to run away pretty quickly. I think I had 1 heart left. I was like, my hardcore Minecraft streaming career was almost over.
It was over before it began.
2 hours in. So, but I'll tell you, the reason why I launched it when I launched it, which was Tuesday night, so that's whatever that is, the 23rd, is because Minecraft was updated to 1.16. And friends, I don't think this is a hot take. I think this is legit. It is the best Minecraft update that they've ever released.
Really?
I 100% think so.
What is it? I mean, it's the Nether update.
It's called the Nether update.
They just added a ton of content?
To the Nether specifically.
Okay.
They added a bunch of stuff, but the big shifts are what is happening in the Nether. So there are Nether biomes now.
Wow.
There are trees in the Nether. Which is really cool, and they're very cool colored trees. There are specific creatures. There are piglings now. There is a Nether specific humanoid character or race or whatever you want to call them. And the funny dynamic about them is that they unless you are wearing something that's gold, they will attack you. But if you are wearing something that's gold, they will not attack you. And if you throw gold at them, as any person would like to have gold thrown at them, if you throw gold at the piglings, they will throw random stuff back to you. And sometimes that stuff is valuable. So,
really cool.
Super good update. If you haven't played Minecraft in a while, you should pop in and play Minecraft. The 1.16 update is on all Bedrock, all Java, everywhere but Education Edition. So lots going on there. Let's talk about Mixer since we're on a gaming / streaming little run here. Mixer is done.
They're toast.
Which is so crazy. It sent like shockwaves
suddenly
through many gaming communities.
And they had spent a lot of money to prop it up. I mean, they had basically paid some gigantic names in the streaming world to join Mixer to basically pull more people away from places like Twitch or whatever it might be, or YouTube or whatever it was, or Facebook, I guess, is another one. Yeah. And then it was just crazy, though, that it just happened like, hey, by the way, tomorrow we're shutting this down and everything is moving. Did they move it all to Facebook streaming, right?
Yeah.
Facebook
So
gaming.
they said that they're partnering with Facebook to do that. They released all of their partners out of their contracts and said that they would have to sign a new contract with Facebook if they wanted to remain up whatever partnership program Facebook has for streaming.
Sure.
But this means like someone like Ninja who went to Mixer for $25 million.
Dang, that guy's so smart.
Ish. Takes the money, goes to Mixer, streams on Mixer for 4 to 5 months. Right, still makes tons of money on Mixer in addition to the whatever millions of dollars that he earned from them, but then also gets released from his Mixer contract now. They had to buy him out. They had to buy him out, I think, for like $20 million, and then he can literally just go back to Twitch.
Yep, and start banking again. This guy's a genius.
Cha-ching.
Tyler Ninja Blevins, you're a genius.
And then there's the other guy, I think his name is Shroud, is the other guy that's the big streamer that just walked away with tons of money here. Not Ninja money, but still like truckloads of money.
Yes.
From this. And Mixer by Microsoft is done. And it's funny because I thought about doing a Mixer exclusive stream and just being like on Mixer. And what a hassle that would have been. But I'll tell you, on a serious note about this, I spent the better part of whatever day that was, Tuesday or Wednesday, watching streamers on Mixer just basically crying on stream. They found out about it the same way the rest of the world found out about it, on the news, on Polygon or on Twitter or whatever. Wow. And then, but this is their business. It's literally like if you owned a store and then someone just came and said, your store is now closed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the same.
You have lost everything for a lot of these people. And this is how they don't make it, like, relatively speaking, they make like some of these guys are making like $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year, which is, enough to live off of, but certainly not like a ton of money. Like, not everyone's making Ninja money.
No.
Is, I guess what I'm saying.
Very rare.
And so they're like, how am I going to pay my mortgage next month? I rely on my audience. And I'll tell you, the great story is I was watching this one streamer, I think his name was Lavardis, and he was crying. He was flat out crying. He's like, I came here from Twitch. They brought me here. They signed me to a contract. It was not a huge financial deal like one of those other dudes. It was like, they gave me a better deal on the percentage of cuts I got from my subscribers and stuff like that, right? I came over here. I was here for 5 years when everyone else was like saying no. And now I'm done. And his community that was watching him, he had about 120 viewers on his Mixer stream while he's talking. Yeah. And what happened was they all so he had a Twitch account and a Twitch channel, and they all of his people that were on Mixer also went to Twitch at the same time and started subscribing to his Twitch channel while he was on Mixer. So he's sitting on Mixer, not even streaming on Twitch. So if you don't know, you can, and he's getting subscribers and followers, and people are doing bits, and he got like what's called a hype train. It's when a bunch of people subscribe and get bits all at the same time, and you earn a higher percentage of the revenue during a hype train. And they like activated a hype train and then got it to like max level, and it took him a while to realize, because he wasn't even looking at his Twitch, he was just talking. And people are like, yo, Lavaris, go look on your Twitch channel. So he opens it up on another monitor and he starts bawling because he realized he just made like $400 that day and he wasn't even streaming on Twitch because his community stepped up for him and said, we got you. And that's like, I'll tell you, I work for a professional community building company, and I am learning so much about community building from Twitch streamers. And like the fact that this guy wasn't even on Twitch, and these people that just watch a guy play video games, they're just watching him play video games, and they like his work, they respect him so much that they literally went to another platform and gave him money when he wasn't even on it yet. And so now it was
pretty awesome.
It was like it restored your faith in the internet a little bit. And, that people still like, that good content and, meaningful, fun, entertaining discussion is still something that can earn you help you build a community and earn you respect. It's a little bit like what we're trying to do here, and I've been learning so much about community building. And so the streamers that have been successful at that on Mixer, I think will totally be successful with that on Twitch or wherever they go.
Yeah,
so
sure.
it's pretty wild. This might be the first WWDC keynote that I didn't watch. So I actually don't know a lot about what's in the new iOS, other than the widgets, which is like literally like an Android ripoff. And I find that fascinating. Tell us what you found interesting in the iOS update.
I think the biggest, there's a couple of things that are just helpful that you're right are just ripoffs from Android, kind of things that have always been on Android. For example, if someone calls you right now, currently or before on an iPhone, it would take over the whole space of the thing instead of just like a little pop-up window. That now exists. I thought there's some interesting organizational things that, again, remind me of Android devices. As far as the way that folders are being able to do all the different little widgets as far as where they exist. And then the biggest one I thought was there's a new translator application that's part of the iOS. And I'm very interested in that, in knowing how much better it is than just a Google Translate. That I think I find fascinating as far as just people being able to communicate with each other on the fly in various situations, in multiple languages. I am always interested in that, as obviously. So I thought that was fascinating. There was also another one that I thought was cool because I don't know most people out there or whatever it might be, there's always this discussion about what map software you should use when you drive. I don't know if you guys have that kind of thing. And we all have a consensus, at least, that the worst one has always been Apple Maps, the default.
Right, yeah, like I use Waze.
Mapping. Yeah, so Waze is amazing, I think. Google Maps is good too, I believe. You know, I have that as one of the things. And we've always said that Apple Maps is just horrible.
I honestly just want to know where the cops are.
Yes. True. But if you ever decide to go ahead and ride your bike, Mike, actually outside, which I think one day you might be doing that, and not ride it on a specific road, what they've done with Apple Maps is they've updated it also, and I thought this was also fascinating. Not sure the application as far as school stuff, but I just think that it's interesting that they're updating all of these things to include basically bike trails and little offshoots, instead of it being just exclusively to highways and roads. I really like that. As far as also, anytime you go outside and you go hike at places, I actually found we were doing a hiking trail just probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I don't want to say we were lost, but let's just say.
But you were lost.
But we didn't know where we were at.
I'm not going to say we were lost, but we didn't know where we were, and we didn't know where to go.
So you look at your map thing, you know, and we had I had reception, and I'm like, wouldn't it be nice if I could actually like zoom in, be able to see basically the topography of where I'm actually at, and really be able to tell I'm not on a road, I'm in the middle of kind of a foresty area with the trail, and know exactly, you know, kind of where this trail leads. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm really interested in seeing if that's part of this new iOS. So as far as the school stuff, I always think that anytime you have an ability to be able to have multiple things on the same screen, and the more that it mimics what we can do on a computer, on a desktop, the better it's going to be. So if an iPad truly turns into what we could just do with a MacBook, the power of an iPad, I believe, as far as the creation tool, is way better than a MacBook. So if they can mimic each other, that's always a positive. So that's what I got from the thing. And people can go check out as far as this article that just gives tons of different things. But those are the things that I thought were the most interesting and possibly have some implications as far as in education.
One of the updates that didn't come from the iOS side was the Apple is moving away from Intel chips, and I thought that was super interesting. They're going to be putting their own chips in Apple computers, and the actual like upshot of that is that you're going to potentially in a couple of years see iOS apps on. Or sorry, you're going to see iOS apps on Apple computers. I think that would be really cool as well. If they could make that screen a touch screen, like if they could take a MacBook Pro and make it a touch screen
also
that is compatible with Apple Pencil.
Oh, baby!
And then
you're talking.
And then make the hinge so it folds flat or something like that.
You can see though that they really don't want to do that, huh?
They really don't,
because it
might cannibalize iPad or something like that.
It would basically, the smushing together of those two things makes total sense, and they are getting so close to that happening. As you even described, even the hardware now is going to be possible as far as that to happen. Yeah, why wouldn't you do it? Well, the main reason why is money. I would say
they need to
you
sell
want to
iPads.
keep the two separate products so that
you
make people buy both of them
that close together. That's interesting.
That's funny.
Our last interesting topic for this bit here is talking about standardized tests, and I think if I remember correctly, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the province of Ontario, has already announced that EQAO, which is the standardized tests for grade 3 and grade 6 students in Ontario, are being canceled for next year.
For next year, okay.
Yeah, they've already announced that EQAO will not happen next year. And I am like super hopeful that we've seen the end of it.
Maybe that's what I'm saying. That's what this article is describing, that there's this movement now away from the need to have these high stakes tests. So the movement is in various places. It's always been with educators. We've always been behind saying this is ridiculous. We shouldn't be doing this. We should be spending so much time, effort, and money, especially on these tests. But states are moving towards that, and legislators are moving towards it. So there's a movement, and then the one part that I think is really interesting too is universities are moving away from using the test scores towards admission purposes. And if that all comes together as I know many states are already following Ontario's lead as far as on that, where they're saying we're not going to do the high stakes test next year either. We're already going to say it's not going to happen. But maybe past that, we can reform what the tests are and what they're like. And in this article, there's a section at the end where it describes basically like what would a reasonable testing system look like. And there's a lot of great ideas in here. Basically talking about limiting the amounts of standardized tests. We've talked about that. There's just too many of them. Basically terminate the high stake consequences of those tests. So whether it be about grade promotion or exit exams or course placement, or it's on the teacher side, whether they get a bonus, where they're, how they rate districts and states and they say, hey, you're a A district or an F district. That's just ridiculous garbage. And then also protecting the youngest kids. So stop testing kids before grade 3. So they have some really good ideas about how to go in and reform it. And at minimum, it should be reformed. And at the ideal would be what you're describing, Mike, which is just let's eliminate them and move past it and develop a better system to track our students' growth as individuals rather than comparing them to other third graders at that level, et cetera, whatever it is, on a test that we've already said they don't really do what they say they actually do. It's
stunning to me that a teacher's compensation would be tied to
Crazy.
whether or not a child had a bad day. Like if you're a teacher in a class, I don't know how the compensation tie works, if it's related to your specific class or whatever. But I mean, if you had a couple kids that, weren't feeling super well and came to school and had to take a standardized test that, and then that they do poorly and drop your average below a threshold where you get a certain level of compensation or not.
Crazy, huh?
I mean, how is that fair? How is that right in any way? Especially when we know that all that a standardized test is really testing is your ability to memorize what's going to be on the standardized test.
Yes.
I mean, even my son knows that. I mean, we were talking about EQAO because that's what we talk about at the Washburn dinner table is standardized testing. And my grade 6 son says, all that they wanted, all that I need to do is memorize it. So what was because he actually said, because he's in grade 6, he said, I just realized I didn't have to do EQAO this year. And I said, well, we probably weren't gonna. In Ontario, you can opt out.
Sure.
So there's like a clause that allows parents to say we don't want our kid to take the standardized test. So we said to him, you weren't probably going to take it anyways because we would have probably opted you out of it. And he said, yeah, because all it does is test my memory. And I'm like, my kid gets it. I was like, hashtag proud father, hashtag doing it right.
The students know. They know what this is about.
It was great.
They understand it. Yes.
And they know. Yeah, it's worthless. I think that's so. Listen, in a laundry list of bad outcomes as a result of COVID, maybe this is one of those things that turns out to be good.
Yes.
That we get rid of something that isn't really doing what it's supposed to do, and even doing what it is supposed to do pretty poorly. So. We can hope that this is the last year of standardized testing.
Oh,
ever.
That'd be amazing. Oh,
wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, I would.
Friends, I had the amazing pleasure to interview Jed Dearybury for the podcast. And when we come back, my conversation with him. See you soon.
GoGuardian helps thousands of K-12 school districts maximize the learning potential of over 8 million students. GoGuardian's products enable productive and safe digital learning by helping educators identify learning patterns, protect students from harmful and distracting content, and support mental health. To support schools during their distance learning transition, GoGuardian is offering free access to their entire product suite until the end of the school year. To learn more about GoGuardian and download their free resources about distance learning, visit their Distance Learning Resource Center at goguardian.com/distance learning.
All right, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Our guest this week is an educator and the co-author of The Playful Classroom, The Power of Play for All Ages. Welcome to the podcast, Jed Dearybury.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. How's it going?
Very, very good. I'm so excited to have you. And before we get to like a serious question, I wanted to tell the story of when we first met because I think it's hysterical that we're talking right now in that context.
I do too. And, I love it.
Right. Me too. And so we had a very heated disagreement on Twitter. That's how we met, arguing on Twitter, as people do. Yep. And you know, it reminds me, especially Glenn said to me after we had this conversation, he was talking to me about me and my like style and the way I argue with people. And I don't take arguments personally. And I thrive on like the debate kind of forum, the way of having a conversation where your positions are, not necessarily fixed, but like you can argue something passionately and still come away out of it, being able to be civil and normal with people. And, I would like to think that, we had this like conversation and we came out of it not just polite to each other, but I would even dare to say we're friends with each other now.
I think you dare to say that correctly. I think you're absolutely right.
I just wish more people could talk like that. What do you think about this sort of confluence of events?
I'll tell you, Mike, I remember that day very well because I thought that I'd gotten myself into another situation. Last summer, I got attacked pretty brutally on Twitter for about 6 months by right-wing conservative folks.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, because, the tweet that I sent out had nothing to do with me being a member of the LGBTQ community, sure. But they interpreted it that way because I had a little rainbow flag on my profile. And so they came at me relentlessly for 6 months.
Wow.
They came after me with death threats. Some fools started mailing packages to my house. They sent emails to places where I had events planned. One of them actually canceled. I lost money because of one of those people. But when that started that day, I was like, oh my gosh, is this happening again? And then I started listening to you guys, and it became more about listening than it did about arguing. I was listening to you guys, and I think y'all were listening to me too. I think we were having some civil discussion. But the power of a mediator stepped in. Our mutual friend, Mayor.
Yeah.
Mayor messaged me and she was like, oh, he's a good guy. And I don't know if she messaged you and said the same thing. But when Mayor said that, I'll tell you, it kind of diffused the conversation. It diffused it a little bit, The problem with Twitter and the online world is that we don't know each other.
Yeah.
We don't hear tone and we just come at each other. But what I think happened with me and you that day is we came back the next day.
Sure.
And we didn't just throw our points out there and walk away or hit the block button, which, I'll tell you, sometimes I've done because I can't take it anymore. But you and I came back the next day and then we kept talking. And what we did is we found there were way more commonalities than there were differences. And we moved forward with those commonalities. And I think that's what people need to do on Twitter. If it's possible. Yeah. Now, there's some things I can't come to consensus with. Like if you hate gay people, I'm not going to be able to come to consensus with you.
Yeah.
Because, that's just it. But, there are some things we can disagree on and move forward.
There is 100%. I appreciate you coming on during, what are obviously incredibly tough times, where we are facing multiple crises, and I we'll get to all of the crises eventually. It's plural now. Yep. But firstly, I'd like to ask, how are you doing? How's your partner doing? How is life for you right now? Are you keeping safe? Are you keeping healthy?
We're doing great. We're keeping safe. We're keeping healthy. We have not been going out and about, even though the world seems to be thinking it's okay to do that. We have chosen not to do that. I have not driven after dark since March the 12th. It is June 20 something. I don't know when we're recording. June 22nd at the time of recording. I haven't driven after dark. We do own a small little place down in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, that we have decided we are not going to be going to probably all summer because the crowds down there are just too large for our comfort right now. Horry County, where Myrtle Beach is, it's actually a big hot spot of virus right here in South Carolina. Actually, the whole state in South Carolina right now is out of control. We've had 3 out of the last 4 days over 1,000 cases, whereas in March and April, we barely had 200 a day. And so we're definitely staying home this summer, growing a garden in the backyard and that kind of thing. In regards to the protests that have been going on lately, I'm very outspoken in my support of the work of the protesters. But we are also we're avoiding the large crowds in regards to that as well. There had been huge crowds here in my town, so. But yeah, there's so many things going on in the world right now.
There's so many things. There's so much going on.
We have not even talked about the dust cloud that's about to engulf us from the Saharan dust cloud. Do you know about that?
No. Oh yeah. God. No, I can't.
Look that up. It's not coming up your way. It's coming down here. It's literally a big dust cloud that's moved across the whole ocean off the Sahara Desert. We're supposed to have like dust in the air Friday and Saturday.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. If it wasn't enough. Killer bees.
No murder hornets down here, though. No murder hornets.
No. Awesome. Let's talk about the book.
Okay.
The Playful Classroom. It's just come out, just in the last, I guess, couple weeks.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about the book.
So the book was born with my friend Julie, Dr. Julie Jones. She is a full-time professor at Converse College here in Spartanburg, South Carolina. At the time that we started dreaming up this book, I was an adjunct there. And she and I found ourselves in very similar situations professionally where we were trying to teach new teachers, pre-service teachers, to be these amazing, I hate to say the word 21st century teacher because we're 20 years into the 21st century, but
it's true.
That at the time that was the buzzword. It's still a buzzword, I guess. And we were training teachers to be in this amazing place, and we found that not everyone was so on board with that kind of teaching. There was lots of sit and get teaching style still out there. Lots of lecture based. Look at a PowerPoint and take notes, and then regurgitate it on a test. And that if you made the A, that meant that you knew the material and you could move on. But Mike, you and I know, both of us know that we've made A's on tests that we couldn't tell you one thing that was on that test right now if we had to. I can remember countless tests where I made an A, a perfect score. And 2 hours after the test, if you'd have given it to me again, I don't think I could have made an A.
I say the same. It's funny. I say the same thing about speeches, like elementary kids doing speeches.
Yeah.
They memorize them, right?
Yep.
At least they did at my school. They memorize them. And then, but I mean, if you ask them 5 days later to tell you what they said in their speech, they're like, I don't know.
Yeah. They don't know. They memorize it. You're exactly right. And that's what we do for tests. And I think when I look back over my life personally, the things that I learned that stuck with me, I learned through playful experiences. Playful could mean recess. Playful could mean art. Playful could mean creativity. Playful could be board games. It could be all kinds of different experiences. We got 16 different types of play that we mentioned in the book that we found research on that that we connected with. But one of my favorite things in the book is we made a chart. It says things we learned from playing. And some of the things that we learned from playing, I'll just read some out of the book. Some of them are very basic. Some of them are deep. Like you learn how to make equal groups when you were playing, right? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, inky, pinky. Do you know, I would love to get into a conversation about what Canadians say to divide people into groups, because I bet we have different little rhymes and sayings.
Interesting.
Do you say eeny, meeny, miny, mo? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I used to do just like the tap on the head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, that's so basic. What about one potato, two potato?
Yeah, for sure.
What about inky, pinky, ponky?
Daddy bought a donkey?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Okay,
yeah,
Mike. Yes. Okay, I love it. Okay, we're commonalities. So,
right.
You learn how to handle conflict. You know,
Yeah.
What if you're out playing backyard ball and the fight erupts, and there's no grown up around? You got to figure out how to handle it. You learn how to be creative. Speaking of backyard ball, we used to play baseball, and we never once had a ball, a bat, or bases. We used a stick and a pecan or a walnut and some scrap cardboard that we found around the yard to be the bases. You learn things like life isn't fair, that you're not always going to be the best. Sometimes you need a plan. Sometimes your plan isn't going to work. Sometimes you need a new plan. And we talk about all of those. I mean, there's probably 50 or 60 things that we came up with that we learned from playing, and we could all instantly tell a story that connected to that moment. And we said, we've got to figure out a way to bring that kind of experience into history and math and science and social studies and language arts, because the learning has to stick. And we just felt like a playful classroom was a place where that learning would stick. So the book was born, and it took us about 5 years, to tell you the truth, to get it all finished up.
Creating memorable moments in class.
Yeah.
I think that's playful experiences create memories, and, not just like a regurgitation of facts. And so when you create memories, these are the things that kids actually will like take with them and recall, years later, even that they learned, because it wasn't just like this. We had to read it and write it down, like you've said, or whatever. But you created an experience around play and around a topic that you needed to cover, so that kids could remember it. I think that's an awesome lesson. I really do. And I love the focus on play, because I don't know if you cover this in the book. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, and I'd love to, though. I always get into this interesting conversation about structured versus unstructured play, and the value, because I live in this kind of games-based learning world where I was really heavily focused on unstructured play. The idea that when you let kids experience, play, they learn a whole bunch of things just through that experience. What is your thoughts on this idea of unstructured play versus structured play, and the value that either of those kind of bring?
Well, we actually talk about both of them in the book.
Great.
And I'll tell you, we talked about both of them in the book because we realized that there are some teachers who are unstructured and some teachers who are structured.
Sure.
So we were trying to help create a playful classroom that any teacher could embrace. Because there are some teachers who are by the book.
Right.
And if
the play is on rails.
Right. It's got to be on rails in that room. But it still can be playful learning moments, right?
Yeah.
I was a little more off the rails. I know you're shocked.
Yeah, me too.
But I was a little more off the rails. Recess is commonly unstructured play very easily.
Sure.
A maker space, I think, could be considered unstructured play, because a lot of the times you might say, hey, build a robot, and then go for it. Here's your stuff. There's no direction. One of my favorite things to tell people when I'm doing a workshop, I do lots of creativity training with teachers, and I will give them a task and then let them go, and they'll start asking all these questions, and I won't answer their questions. I just say, figure it out. And what I'm doing is forcing them into moments of unstructured play. Whereas the more structured teacher would answer their questions like, the common question I get, I do tape art, like creating art on the wall with tape. And they'll say, well, how big does it have to be? How many colors of tape do I have to have? And I'm saying, I don't care. I want to see. I'm more worried about the process, the learning that's going to come as a result. And you know what? Every time when I take those restraints off, they always do above and beyond what I ever could have thought of in my brain. They blow me away. Kids all the way up to teachers who've been teaching 20, 30 years. It's amazing what happens in those unstructured moments when the brain is forced to think in a new way. Really quickly, I don't want to beat this to death, but I'm doing a camp online right now. I call it Camp Sparkle. Yeah. And Sparkle stands for service, play, art, reading, kindness, leadership, and encouragement. And it's a 6-week camp where we're going to encourage each one of those things over the course of the week. This week, we started play. And I gave them a task to create their own rock, paper, scissors game with 3 random items that they brought before. We're meeting virtually. So I said, hey, they have this craft box. I said, pick 3 items out of your craft box. And they now have to come up with their own rock, paper, scissors game using those 3 items. Some of them have like a marker, a styrofoam tray, and a spiky ball. Well, who beats what? And I don't know. Make it up. Figure it out. Why would the marker beat the styrofoam tray? Whatever. And I'm forcing them into some unstructured play, but is it kind of structured? See, so it's a balance. I think it's a balance.
That's right. Yeah. Shifting gears a little. It seems like a lot of people have just realized in the last 2 weeks that there's a race problem in the United States. I'm wondering about your thoughts on those who are just joining us kind of in the real world now. After an initial period of indignation, my next thought is I'd rather them come late than not arrive at all to what's going on. And I'm curious what you might say to those who are just starting to learn about the issues that their Black peers and coworkers have been dealing with their entire lives.
Well, it's such a... First of all, I want to say, you're right. Better late than never. I literally, just before I was on the podcast with you, I was on a call with a diversity class from Holyoke. And I was talking to them, and there was some other panelists in the group too. And one of them said, if today is the day you choose to start, then by all means, welcome to the fight. And we're glad you're here. And I think we have to have that approach, because if we try to shame the people, be like, where you been? I mean, I want to be like, how did you not know there was a race problem? Because, and I don't want to say race problem. There's a racism problem. The problem isn't race. It's the racism that's the problem. And I don't know how they didn't know, other than that they were just so wrapped up in their privilege that they didn't see it. Or they don't have friends who are close enough to them who have shared it with them. My entire life, I have been around people who have been marginalized. As a gay guy, I did not fit in well with the straight, white, heteronormative in high school. So I gravitated to people who were marginalized in high school. Specifically in the high school band that I was in, when we would go on band trips or to football games or whatnot, there were 4 buses. The first 3 were always the white folk bus. The 4th bus was where all the black folks got. It was just how it worked out. Well, I always got on the black bus, number 4, because that's where all my friends were. And that's the one where I felt most welcome. Even though I wasn't out as a gay man at that time, I felt like it was a safe space. Being around other marginalized people at that, still what I call my formative years, helped me to understand what it meant to fight for those things, fight for equality early on. I saw firsthand what racism looked like when I was on that bus. It was not pleasant, and I was able to identify it very early on.
Yeah.
And I realized other people didn't have that experience. So to the people who are just now here, I'm glad you're finally seeing it. Let's get to work. There's a lot of work to be done. Don't ask all your black friends to explain it to you. Google is your friend. Ask other white folks who have been into work to help you, but don't ask the black folks to do the work, because it's not their job to teach you about these things. There's plenty of books out there that you can learn from.
Interesting. And there are a lot of teachers out there with jobs in school districts that are, how do I say this, less than supportive of educators with opinions on social issues. Yeah. Yet we're also at a point where I think that you and I believe, and I think you just suggested it, that everyone needs to be actively involved in the societal changes that are needed. You just said, get involved. There's lots to do. I'm wondering if you've put much thought into those teachers who fear that speaking their mind on Twitter or wherever will cost them their jobs, and how they should move forward. I know that there are teachers listening to this that are wondering this specific thing because it's scary to them, and they've told me that.
Yep.
How do they move forward in light of the fear that speaking their minds would cost them their jobs? How can they still be an ally?
So the majority of the people that you're talking about in that breath, I would assume, are white educators. I think the black educators understand the importance of the fight, and I think they are willing to speak up. And of course, I don't want to speak for an entire race of people. You clearly hear me say that, but for the white educator, and I can't speak to the fears of black folks because I'm not black, but to the white educators and their fears, first of all, I know they're real because I live in the South and I understand what that's like because I'm surrounded by it down here. But what we were talking about before I got on the podcast again was that you've got to count the cost, and you've got to get to the point where the risk is greater than the what if you don't. The risk of speaking up has got to be worth more to you. It's got to be worth it, is what I'm saying to you. And if it's not worth it for you to speak up, then you may be part of the problem. Because what I mean by saying that is make a list of the worst things that could happen. What's the worst thing that could happen for you speaking up for racism? That you lose your job in a racist district that doesn't support you speaking out and using your free speech? If that's the worst thing that could happen, I think we've got to get to the point, Mike, where we as a society are willing to call out racism exactly when we hear it, exactly when we're seeing it, and not being afraid of it. If you saw somebody about to be murdered on the street, I hope all of us would be like, no, stop, help that person. They're about to be murdered. Call 911. If there was a fire, we would scream and shout it. We wouldn't think twice about it. Why are we afraid of calling out the racism?
100%.
The racism is equally threatening to our society as murder and fire and all it's COVID. It's threatening us as a civilized country. It's ripping us apart, and the reason I think it's ripping us apart is because too many of us are silent about it. If we would take the risk, let's talk in language teachers understand. Every teacher that I know says, oh, we want our students to be risk takers. And what does that mean? You want them to be able to try and fail and try again. Well, I need educators to be risk takers in the anti-racism world, because if you're not actively anti-racist, then you're supporting the racist every time. So you must be actively anti-racist, and you've got to count the cost. Is it going to be risky? Yes. A friend of mine just this past week, you probably saw the tweet, I think that's why you mentioned it, got chastised for saying Black Lives Matter and dismantle white supremacy on Twitter. Well, first of all, I'll tell you, I think that the person who called and chastised him, I think she's probably racist. Because I know this person. I know some of her family. The reason she didn't like what that person was saying was because it was offensive to her fragility, and she didn't like it. But at the end of the day, there are Black students in the school where this person works, and their lives matter, and they need to know that an administrator in the building supports them and their lives and their work. Mm-hmm. So I say you just got to get to the point where it's worth the risk. And for me, it's worth the risk because at the end of my life, I want to know that I stood for what's right and not for not living in fear of what if.
And it's also now standing up for what's right when it comes to the LGBTQ community as well. And you've been doing that probably your entire, like, I haven't known you for long, but I have little doubt that if you're outspoken now, you've been outspoken for a while. But I would love to know, sorry, you want to say something and I'm interested in hearing what you have to say.
Well, I was just going to tell you, you'd be surprised. I have not been as vocal my whole life. I did not come out until December of 2012. Officially. I mean, anybody who knew me knew that I was gay. But because I was an educator, I did not come out publicly. I did not talk about it until the 2012-2013 school year. It's actually the day after Christmas 2012, if you wanted an exact date. But the 13-14 school year, the end of the 13 school year, I won school level teacher of the year. And then at the beginning of 13-14, I was named district teacher of the year. And so I finally thought, well, if I'm going to come out, now's the time to do it, because if they were to fire me now because of this, which now let me just clarify, my district never once had anything negative to say about it. But because you live in the South, it's part of a game you play down here.
Sure.
Because church is not just a religion down here. It is social. It is cultural.
It's an institution.
It is an institution. A pastor at the church I used to go to was the head of the school board in the same district where I worked.
Yeah.
And so I was terrified to come out for a lot of reasons. It wasn't because of the school district. It was because of the institution of it all.
Yes.
But then I thought, well, if they fire me as district teacher of the year, it's really going to look bad on them. And once I came out, I got braver. I got a little braver and started speaking my mind. I did leave the classroom. I didn't leave the district unhappy, but I left the regular. I left the regular ed classroom. I'm still in the classroom with higher ed, but I left my second grade classroom because I found myself wanting to use my voice more, and I thought that using my voice in my current capacity at the time would be more of a distraction to the work than I wanted. So I weighed the cost, and I took a risk. And I stepped out, and you know what? I lost some things. I lost my students. I lost my school life. I lost that daily routine. I took another job, and I began to find my voice there, and I wanted more voice. So I left that job, and now I work for myself, and I'm still an adjunct at a local university here. So I do still feel the pressure of being mindful of what I say, but I definitely feel more free now than I ever have. I'm making less money than I ever have before. But if I look at the big picture of it all, Mike, when I counted the risk, this was worth it. It was worth it more for me to be able to be an advocate than it was to live in that comfort and that privilege that I had. So I had to make a decision.
Yeah. And so what I was going to get to, and thanks for that. It's a great story hearing your path through that. Is what's been going on with Nancy Jo Lambert and the TCEA, and I think it's worth bringing up. And maybe you can. Because I think we need to talk about this, and this could hurt us as a podcast. It could certainly hurt me, maybe a little bit, but I think it's something that needs to be discussed, at least what happened and whether or not it's been resolved. Maybe you can kind of talk about what's happened a little bit, because you know this story a little bit better than I do for sure, right. and then take us through what, because I think standing up for this is what matters.
Well, of course I don't want to speak for Nancy Joe.
Of course
she has a blog, and maybe you can share that link with with your listeners so that she can.
Yeah,
you have that link?
And I'm going to. Yeah,
you have that.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
So share that, because nobody can tell the story like the horse's mouth, right?
Yeah.
So that's Nancy Joe, and Nancy Joe and I met on Twitter. We both are advocates for the LGBTQ community. Nancy Joe shared a little bit about her sexuality in a presentation at TCEA. It was not a presentation on being LGBTQ, but just as if you would say, I have a husband or a wife, Nancy Joe shared some personal information about herself. Just like if I would share that, hey, I'm a gay man, or wear a rainbow bracelet to signify that I was part of the gay community, or even a shirt. It was just a passing thought in the presentation. After her presentation was finished, she was approached by 2 board members and told that she couldn't make those kind of statements without a warning and without prepping people, that they didn't come to hear that it was like an off-color joke. She shouldn't have said it. I remember the day that it happened, because Nancy Joe tweeted me privately. She was so distraught. It tore me out of the frame that an international organization like TCA, they have members all around the world, as far as I think, or at least their conference has people from all around the world that come there. It's a very large conference. I want to say this. I don't think TCEA is a bad organization. I think they just have some poor leadership at this time. TCE as a whole has done a lot of good things for teachers. I've been to the conference. I've been a presenter there with some other organizations that I've worked for. I think they put on a great conference. The time that I went, it was in Austin. Is it in Austin every year? I don't think it is. I think they move it around.
I'm not 100% sure, but it has been recently for sure.
But I think that the way that their leadership handled this was very poor. Because here's the thing. When you do something bad, let me even rephrase it. When you make a mistake, say you made the mistake and apologize and work to fix it and work to move forward. And what's happened with TCA is that Nancy followed the protocols of filing the complaint, and nothing was done. In fact, she was told by the executive director that they did nothing wrong. Okay, clearly they did something wrong. I will tell you, behind the scenes, I don't think that it's it's on Nancy Joe's blog. She did get a private email from the executive director, but it was not very well worded. I don't know if she has got any other correspondence at this time. But at this point, I think there needs to be a public response about their support for LGBTQ educators, because it did fall out into the public square. So now those of us who are in the gay community, the LGBTQ community, we've all feel discriminated against now, and we need to hear from all of them. I did not tweet them yesterday or today, but I did tweet every day last week. And just because I'm not tweeting doesn't mean that I'm not still at work behind the scenes, talking with Nancy Joe, and we're thinking about how to move forward. And hopefully the leadership of the organization will come out and apologize publicly for the discriminatory practices that they have. And, just throwing out that little I'm sorry that they had on Twitter, that was a little much for me. And they apologized for their all-white panel, but they didn't apologize for their practices towards the LGBTQ community. So we need a little bit more.
We do need a little bit more. So I was watching the news. So I'm Canadian. Our audience knows this. And so one of the things that comes up on the podcast fairly often is kind of the pretty stark differences in culture between, as shocking as it may sound to people, there's some pretty, and I keep interrupting myself because I'm actually reframing it now, because I think the cultural differences between Canadians and Americans become more and more apparent like every day.
Yeah.
Especially lately. So I'm watching the news, and I'm pretty interested in American politics. I joke on the podcast that I know more about American politics than most Americans.
I wouldn't be surprised if you to agree with. I agree with you there.
And so, I saw the kind of what Donald Trump is trying to do with LGBTQ folks and their health care.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm watching you tweet every day last week about Nancy Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm watching you tweet about Black Lives Matter. And I am like a white dude, straight white dude from Canada. And I'm exhausted, Jed.
Mm-hmm.
I am exhausted. I am so tired. And not just of work, and like I work up, but like of this, like everything that's going on. I'm exhausted, man. I am in awe of you and your effort and your passion in light of, everything that you have to deal with as just like a human being. I don't understand how you keep going sometimes, to be perfectly honest.
Wow. Well, thank you for that, Mike. I really could hear the sincerity in your voice, and your listeners I don't know if they know this, but we can see each other, so I could see your sincerity.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I will tell you, most days, Mike, I'm absolutely terrified. If you want to know the truth. If I can just be brutally honest with everybody who's listening, even in this moment, I'm replaying everything I've said in this podcast. Did I say a person's name I shouldn't have said? Did I talk about an organization that I shouldn't have talked about? Did I say the wrong word? Did I choose the wrong word? Where is this going to lead to something that's going to harm me? I think about it every second of every day. Not only when I'm talking on the podcast, when I get ready to leave my house, many times I look at my outfit and think, am I too flamboyant to go to this place today? Because there's some places around town that, if you don't dress a certain way or look a certain way, or for the longest time, I was scared to even wear my little rainbow bracelet to Walmart. To just be honest with you, because the type of people that go to Walmart here where I'm at. And now as I'm saying that, I'm like, oh, am I offending people who go to Walmart? I'm not trying to offend people to go to Walmart, but in my area, Walmart's not a safe place for me. It's just not. Well, it's safe if I wear a camo hat and some boots and dirty myself up a little bit, like I've been working on a construction site. And those may sound like stereotypes. I'm not trying to stereotype. I'm trying to tell you how I survive as a gay man surrounded by straight, white, evangelical, conservative people on a day-to-day basis. And what I want to say to that, you said you're exhausted, and it can be exhausting to think about, but I still have the privilege of being able to put on those clothes and walk into a store like Walmart and pass as a straight acting good old country boy. My black friends don't have that privilege. They can't take their skin off. So you think about how tired you are and how tired I am. Yeah. My black friends are exhausted.
Yep.
And they have been doing this work for centuries. For centuries. And when I see people get to the point of where their protest and the protest turn to beyond protest, I understand the mindset, because when you feel backed into a corner, when you feel threatened, when you have nothing else to lose, that's what you do. There have been a couple of times where I have been treated poorly as a gay man, where it hurt so badly that I was willing to do just about whatever it took to fix that. One time I was at Walmart, since we're talking about Walmart, I was at Walmart, and my mom and I had been Christmas shopping. And I had on a really cute outfit that day. I had on some skinny jeans. I had on some red Converse shoes. And with those red Converse shoes, I had on some green Christmas socks.
Oh, fantastic.
On top, I had on a green waffle like sweatshirt, wearing a red puffer vest over it. Like I was Christmas over the top, right? Red, green, red, green. And I looked so cute, and I had my hair fixed just right. We've been shopping all day, and there was one last thing I needed. It was for a little gift bag I was putting together it was actually for a student that I was sponsoring for Christmas. And he wanted some WWE wrestling men. And so I knew Walmart would have them. So we stopped by the Walmart, and I walked onto the aisle there, and it'd been such a great day. And out of nowhere, I heard this voice call me a fag. Somebody said, "Oh, there's a fag over there." And the only reason that I could think that they would say that was because I looked so damn cute, right? I mean, I was dressed to the nines, right? And you know the stereotype about gay guys, and we know how to dress right. And then they started making sexual comments to me about, "Will you come do, and making these aggressive like moves towards me. And I was trying to pretend like I didn't hear them and keep looking for the wrestling men. Then they came towards me, and I walked over to the next aisle, and lo and behold, the next aisle I didn't even think about. It was the Barbie aisle. So I went from the wrestling aisle to the Barbie aisle, and they followed me over there, and they kept repeating the things. So I just grabbed something and ran up to the cash register and checked out really quickly. And when I got up there, they came in the line behind me, and I told the manager what was happening. The manager laughed. The manager didn't do anything. The manager didn't protect me. I ran to my car. My mom was in the car. I lost it when I got in the car. And Mike, that's just one of hundreds of things like that have happened to me. But again, I say, where I have 100 things, my black friends have 10,000 things. And so that those kind of incidents plus being around and listening and internalizing the stories of other marginalized people, that keeps me going. It keeps me pushing through the fear. You mentioned my Twitter. Every time I went at TCEA, I was afraid. I have a book coming out this week. I need TCEA to love the book. I want them to love the book and talk about the book and sell the book in their bookshop, right? At the conference. But in the end of the day, more than I want to sell books, I want to be true to who I am. And I realized that saying all those things on Twitter is going to turn off some school. There are some superintendents who were to bought my book 2 weeks ago, but they saw those tweets and like, we can't buy a book from him. He's too controversial. Yeah. I would rather be that kind of I would rather be the controversial teacher than the number one seller of books. Yeah. So I just had to, again, count the cost.
Well, Jed, I appreciate all the work that you do, all the advocacy. And I am planning on reading your book, and I'm excited to do that. And then we'll share links in the show notes on how people can pick that book up, and they should. And I can't wait till the time when we can hang out in person. When people are allowed out of their houses again. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Mike. I had a blast.
Thanks for listening to OnEducation. My name is Glenn Irvin. My co-host is Mike Washburn. OnEducation is part of the On Podcast Media Network. You can listen to this show and many others by great educators like Monica Burns, Mike Matera, Tisha Richmond, and many more by visiting onpodcastmedia.com. Want to get in touch with us? Check out our website at oneducationpodcast.com. You can tweet us at oneducationpod. Mike is at Mr. Washburn on Twitter, and I can be found on Twitter at IrvSpanish. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/oneducationpod. We're also on Instagram at oneducationpod. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we would be thrilled if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts. When you leave a rating, it gives our podcast rankings a boost. This helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Participate, for supporting us. Check out participate.com to learn more about them. Thanks as always for listening. Stay awesome and see you soon.